I want to talk about a frustration many believers face. You know your spiritual rights. You speak the word. You issue commands in faith. But when you pray, it feels like you hit a brass ceiling. You swipe your key card, but the door simply refuses to open. There is a massive difference between possessing spiritual authority and knowing how to actually operate as a priest to service that authority. Think of it like a business. You can be handed the title of CEO and a corporate black card. That is your delegated authority. But if you have absolutely zero idea how to run the daily operations, your title will not keep the company afloat. To understand the operations of priesthood, we have to go right to the text. Hebrews chapter 5, beginning in verse 1, lays the groundwork. Every high priest is selected from among men and is appointed to represent them in matters related to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray, since he himself is subject to weakness. This is why he has to offer sacrifices for his own sins as well as for the sins of the people. No one takes this honor upon himself. He must be called by God, just as Aaron was. The passage then turns directly to Jesus, Yahushua. Verses 5 and 6 say, "So Christ also did not take upon himself the glory of becoming the high priest, but God said to him, 'You are my son. Today I have become your father.' And he says in another place, 'You are a priest forever, in the order of Melchizedek.'" Now listen carefully to what follows in verses 7 through 9. During the days of Yahushua's life on earth, he offered up prayers and supplications with strong cries and tears to the one who could save him from death, and he was heard because he feared. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered. And once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him, and was designated by God to be a high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Let that sink in. Jesus offered up prayers with tears, and he had to learn obedience through what he suffered to operate as high priest. If the Son of God could not bypass obedience to step into his priestly function, neither can you and I. This is not basic Sunday school material. Understanding your priestly operation belongs to mature spiritual understanding. In fact, the writer of Hebrews calls out the readers on this exact point. Verses 11 and 12 say, "We have much to say about this, but it is hard to explain because you are slow to learn. Though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you the elementary truths of God's word all over again. You need milk, not solid food. But there is a solution, and it involves a specific location." Hebrews 10:19 sets the destination. "Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Yahushua," stop right there. The most holy place. If the believer is openly invited to enter the most holy place to exercise their priesthood, we have to ask some practical questions. Where exactly is it? What makes it holy? How do we actually approach it? To answer those questions, we have to look back at the physical pattern God gave to Moses in the desert. The Tabernacle of Moses had a strict layout. You did not just parachute your way into the center. There was an intentional progression. First the courtyard, then the holy place, and finally the most holy place. But here is what we often miss. The tent and the furniture were not the things that made the tabernacle truly significant. What made it special were two completely separate elements, the cloud and the glory of God. Look at Exodus 40, verses 36 through 38. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel during all their travels. The cloud was their divine GPS. It functioned as their navigator. Moses could not just pitch the tent wherever he found a nice piece of shade. The cloud dictated exactly where to move, and exactly when and where to build. Spiritually, the cloud represents the present direction in which God is moving his people. This is vital because you can possess the correct, biblically sound tabernacle, but if you construct it where the cloud used to be, you are entirely missing God. When his direction moves, we have to pack up and follow. But the cloud is only the first part. The second part is the glory. If the cloud is the direction, the glory is the Father's stamp of approval. Think of God as a building inspector. He only signs the certificate of occupancy after the contractor proves they followed the blueprint perfectly. Look at the exact sequence in Exodus 40, verse 33. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and altar and put up the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. And so Moses finished the work. Notice those words. Moses finished the work. Then verses 34 and 35 happen. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The glory did not fill an unfinished structure. Moses constructed the tabernacle strictly according to the pattern. He completed the obedience, and only then did the glory fall. God's approval rests on completed work. This requirement applies directly to the believer. In the Old Testament, a priest could not even begin his service until he was properly clothed in his specific garments, the tunic, the robe, the ephod. Spiritually, these represent the believer's character, righteousness, faithfulness, love for humanity. You build your life into a functional tabernacle first. You cannot live like the devil Monday through Saturday, completely ignoring God's blueprint for your character, and then expect His glory to crash into your prayer closet on Sunday. The priestly life and the prayer life belong together. This visual chart lays out the 5-step progression for the believer. Step 1 is direction, identifying the cloud. Step 2 is construction, building your life according to the specific pattern God gave you. Step 3 is obedience. You actually finish the work, which leads to Step 4, approval. God sees the completed obedience and His glory rests upon it. And that brings us to the 5th step, communion. It is only from this place of divine approval that the priest approaches the most holy place to commune with God. We have to understand that prayer was never intended to be a tool we use to compensate for a life that actively refuses the pattern of God. We have to stop merely chasing the glory, the spiritual highs, while totally ignoring the cloud. Follow the direction God is giving. Obey His blueprint for your character. Complete the work and build your life as a tabernacle. But this raises a massive question. Once your life is built, the cloud is overhead, and the glory represents the Father's approval, how do we actually step through that final veil? When you are finally standing in the most holy place, how do you distinguish your own thoughts and impressions from the complete counsel of God? That is exactly where we go in part 2. But for now, build the tabernacle.